Hi, I'm Lisa Hicks. I work in the Technical Services branch in the Division for Air Quality, and I am the supervisor of the Quality Assurance section. As you see in the title, QA Division for Air Quality, quality is in our name. It's also in my section's name, so we are required to do a good job. So today, my goal is to present a comprehensive summary of what the QA section does concerning data review in our field work that hopefully may be relevant to other divisions. Each division obviously has their own standards and procedures, but I'm hoping data is still data. And maybe in the future we can learn from each other if we ever have questions or want to consolidate on an issue. The DEP QA team, which Larry heads up, may be able to assist with that. So don't hesitate to ask your division representative, or I'll just offer up Larry as a resource as well. Okay, so everybody has acronyms, and these are just a very few of the acronyms that air quality uses. I won't run through them all. You're quite familiar, I'm sure, with QAP and SOP by now. The one things that are fairly specific to air quality is what we call the NAQs, the NAAQS, which is our standards from the federal regulations, the CFRs. So I'll be saying NAQs probably fairly frequently throughout the presentation. I may say SO, which is not so, but it actually means site operator, which I will describe later on. So these are just a few of our acronyms, and I'll try not to throw too many other strange ones around. So I will briefly talk about the section and then introduce you to all of us. Since you can't see me or see any of us, I'll just give you our faces in just a second. Basically, the QA section consists of a supervisor, hopefully, in anywhere from 1 to 6 staff. They have been very short-staffed in the past. Before I even started, they had like 2 people. We are currently at 5. People have many different educational backgrounds. We mainly have the sciences, so geology, geography, biology, and meteorology. We do have and have had several with an engineering type background. And all of the sciences, and even if it's not a sciences, you can learn our data review processes, and they work very well to work within our quality systems. We also have several different people in the branch who work cooperatively with us. We have a branch scientist, we have a branch chemist, we have another entire section of the technical support staff, and we have the field operations branch we work very closely with. So just quickly, our scientist works with our network planning, which will include our different types of air monitoring shelters, which you will see in just a little bit. She reviews QAPs and SOPs. She's another level of data review for us, and she uploads data to EPA's websites. She also consults on QA issues if we need another independent verifier. Our chemist also works on QAPs for air toxics data. And the 2 real important ones are the technical support section, who performs maintenance on all of our samplers and our gaseous continuous monitors. They assist with our database issues, and they help us with troubleshooting issues also. And then all of our divisions have a field operations branch, and ours are where the site operators, or SOs, are located. And these folks are the ones that actually spend day-to-day activities in these air monitoring shelters, and they're responsible for maintaining and collecting all of our air ambient monitoring data. They are actually independent of QA, but they are very important to work with us. So no faces, here we are. If you can ID all of the characters, you get a gold star, but don't ask me who some of these are because my section staff helped me put them together. Anyway, you see our names, Lisa Hicks, I'm up in the corner. I don't usually have horns, so yeah, that's what it is. Okay, some responsibilities of our section. We review data and we verify and validate that data. We conduct independent technical performance and systems audits of monitoring equipment, and I can go over that a little bit more, what that includes. Our documentation is paramount to what we do. Our QAPs and SOPs obviously are our main documentation records. We also have to keep very detailed records at the air monitoring shelters and in our lab. Our audits, we conduct them in person in the sites, which are located across the state. As I mentioned, we verify and validate everything from minute, hourly, and monthly data for all of our air samplers. We operate a quality assurance lab, which is located down in the main Sauer Lab building. We have a room there where we have all of our analyzers and standards. We certify all of our audit equipment in that lab. We also have standards that we have to meet federal regulations to meet all of our requirements. We also have a big training program, obviously for our new staff, for our old staff, and then for site operators and other people in maybe our educational department or even the director's office often would require training from us. So again, documentation. Our mantra is, if it's not written down, it did not happen, and that we take very seriously. So if you cannot prove that you did something with writing or a logbook or an Excel file or even our books that our logbooks are actually printed records, then it didn't happen. We are audited by EPA every couple of years, and so we are required to produce the records of what we do. These are the reasons why we do it: traceability, repeatability, the legal record, chain of custody for our data, and then that official record that we can provide to anyone who needs that. So as I said, outlined in the federal regs is our QMP, the QAP, and the SOP. As I mentioned, every activity at the air shelters and in our lab must be documented on site. And that helps identify potential effects on the data. If something happened at an air shelter, air monitoring shelter, that may affect data like burning leaves next door or an idling vehicle, that could get picked up by our sensors, and we would need to take that into effect when we validated the data. We also have at least one staff member that verifies our data other than the person who initially reviewed it. And usually we have 2 or 3 levels that actually do a 100% data check. So just quickly, QAPs and SOPs, and here's what they look like. Pretty standard format, I think, across the EP. We have, these are just examples of our QAPs and SOPs. As you can see, we have several different ones. The QAPs are obviously program specific, and SOPs can be more broad and address more of our issues across the division. So here's a picture of one of our shelters. This is where all of our data is collected. You can see different monitors and samplers on top, on the roof, and then also inside the cube, there are many different types of analyzers. We operate 31 sites across the state, 24 by DAQ, 6 by the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District, and 1 site is operated by Mammoth Cave National Park. These are close-ups of our different types of samplers. The particulate matter samples are on the left. The boxes contain a data logger and a display. The top silver-looking vacuum canisters are where the particulate matter is collected and then processed in the samplers. They are collected on filters, so those filters must be removed individually and sent off to a lab. The gaseous analyzers on the right, on my right, are just what they say. They're gas cylinders that are used to measure ozone, sulfur dioxide, and various other pollutants. We mentioned that we do audits at all of these sites. We perform checks on the operations of all of the pollutant instruments and meteorological data. In an average year, we perform approximately 342 performance audits and 24 systems audits on an annual basis. And those include individual samplers. So an individual ozone sampler at all of our sites, that's what the addition comes up to. So audit procedures, we use different audit equipment than that equipment is located at the site shelters. We have different temperature and pressure instruments that measure the same things as the site operators, but they are independently calibrated, so the data can be compared. And then we have our results that are verified against formulas that check whether we meet the NAQs, or the air quality standards. As I mentioned, we have different types of audits: performance audits, systems audits, site evaluation, and then unannounced systems audits. Here's examples of all of our forms. So this is an audit form for sulfur dioxide. We have a QA section pre-audit checklist. We have the unannounced site systems review. And then we have the site systems review. And then lastly, we have what's called a siting evaluation field form. This is not a responsibility of QA directly, but it does evaluate the sites, mainly the exterior environmental conditions, such as the height of the shelter, the height of the sampler inlets, anything from trees or other obstacles that might be a problem in data collection, and all of that is set forth in CFR. So types of data that we review. As I said, continuous data, which is SO2, ozone, and then oxides of nitrogen. And then also our intermittent data for the particulate matter, which is lead, particulate matter 2.5, and then particulate matter 10. That refers to the size of the particles. In 2019, there's the number of data points that we verified. Quite a few. Likely in 2020, it was a very similar process, although we have not tallied that yet for our annual reports. With COVID, we actually stayed on track with all of our audits. And we feel proud of that. Okay, a couple of key elements in our data review: consistency, completeness, and independence. In a second, you'll see an example of a chart, and that will tell a story of our data, but we are required to look into what those data tell us, the who, what, where, when, and how of how that data was collected and what it is telling us. Should be familiar with data quality indicators. If you've had a QA presentation before, we talk about these in QAPs. They're required in QAPs. There's what they are: quantitative and qualitative measures used in interpretation of acceptability of data. That's one of many definitions for those. There's what the main ones are. They're all related to one another, and these are all conditions we have to meet for our data. And you can look up DQIs in any EPA QA document, and you can get a better explanation of what those are. So our sources for validating our data. We have monthly data charts and reports. We have what we call strip charts, which is real-time data. We have logbooks that we handwrite and manually record information. We have Excel spreadsheets where we record calibrations. And then we have weather data and wildfire maps and other materials that help us indicate what may be affecting our data. Here's an example of a chart. And you can see now why we had 500,000 data points, because we look at every single one of these numbers and code it. You'll see the color codes and then the letter, the alpha characters as well. And they all mean something of what's going on with that data. Here's an example of the strip chart. So the precision checks show up as one type of spike. Our manual calibrations show up as a different type, and you start to recognize these patterns as you're looking at the data. Here's an example just of a logbook. Someone's written down what they've done at the shelter. So where does our data go? Primarily, it goes into the air quality system database, which is maintained by EPA. There are various and sundry reasons and methods that is done, and there are reasons what it is used for. So assessing air quality on a national and state level. They evaluate state reporting to determine if both city and rural areas are meeting or not meeting the NAQs. It is used in modeling for permit limits and reviews. And then Congress requires reports, as we all know, on air quality conditions. And so it's also used for that. It's also used for the Air Quality Index, which is an EPA resource for the public. And then it's used in trend analyses for many different types of state processes. Here's an example of the AQS. the website is listed at the bottom. This is where the public can obtain data from states and from the national system, and you can compare with historical data or real-time data. And there's a fire and smoke map as well where you can get information about that. It's a very big resource, and it's used in a lot of different reporting. Here's an example of the AQI, Air Quality Index. And this is basically used for reporting air quality. The values of the AQI generally correspond to the ambient air quality conditions that equal the short-term NAAQS for protection of public health. So more directly involved with much of the public, they want to know if it's good, moderate, unhealthy for sensitive groups, etc. So these different color codes will tell them what that is. And here's an example for Kentucky in December 28th of 2020. This was our particulate matter code, which was yellow, which was, I believe, a moderate condition. You can get more information in the data from the AQS site. This just gives you a visual overview of what is going on with that. So we have a reg for that. The CFR mandates everything we do in terms of limits, procedures, scope of the program, and just about everything else. So it does the standards, it will do our methodologies, it will do our design network criteria, many other things that we have in the chart here. It also has things we don't directly deal with, like the control of air pollution from locomotives. If you'd like more information from me or from anyone in my section, or if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. There is my phone number and there's my email address. I am found in my house currently, and I'm not going to tell you where that is, but please reach out if you do have any needs. And thank you very much for your time today.